Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and today I will be wrapping up the books that I read in the latter half of December. There are practically none, actually, so this is kind of a weird random wrap-up, and I'm sorry. So the one book that I actually completed that is an actual book that I am reviewing on Goodreads and all that other stuff is Wayward Starr by Mary Fan. This is a book that is technically going to be a January read because I didn't actually finish it before I went on vacation, and I didn't take it with me because I only had 50 pages left or less. So I basically I finished it at the beginning of January instead. But this is a series about some aliens that basically buy artists from Earth from different like schools where they train different artists, different performing artists and whatnot. And these artists like think they're going to outer space to like live this glamorous life, but actually the aliens have the ability to tamper with the human mind telepathically, and they can basically erase everything that you are and erase your memory of everyone you knew on Earth, etc., etc. So it's really creepy, and it's really oppressive to these people from Earth who are going there. So this is a YA dystopian. It follows a girl named Iris who basically is one of these artists. She's a viola player, and she gets hired by these aliens, and she goes to space, and she falls in love with an alien who's part of the resistance, and so she ends up being part of the resistance, and like all this crazy stuff happens. It's really insane. And seriously, if you've read the ever popular Lunar Chronicles, like the stuff that the aliens can do to people's minds in this is like infinitely worse than that. So this basically ends up being a like really horrifyingly crazy book, and I really like this series so much. And also, even though there are times when it can feel like your typical YA dystopian, it's also less formulaic at the same time because it is an indie book, and typically indie books definitely feel like they don't fall into the same trying to be the same thing at all. So the only other book that I finished in the latter half of December was this random like super short picture book that my aunt had at her house when I was visiting my dad for Christmas, and she had this book that it was called Cats and Their Women, and it was basically just pictures of cats and people, and with a little paragraph explaining like this person's story about their cat or their cats or whatever, whether it was like how they got them or some significant detail or something like that. And it's from 1991, which is not that long ago, but it still felt so dated. I could not believe what I was reading half the time. So basically you can tell that animal welfare was in just such a different place back then, just that short time ago, where like hardly any of these people are spaying and neutering these animals and like all kinds of stuff, and it's just talking in such a blasé way about oh, this cat had kittens and then this cat had kittens, blah blah blah. And like some of these little paragraph things accompanying the photos were like people who were animal rescuers and that's how they got their cat, blah blah blah, but the majority of them were kind of like, oh, we got our neighbor's cat had kittens and we got them and blah blah blah, or like, oh, and then this cat died because she was hit by a car, blah blah blah. And it's like so weird to me that back then people were so much more like meh about letting their cats outside and not spaying and neutering their cats and all kinds of stuff. And it just, like, I'm not any kind of expert in that field or anything like that, but I do volunteer at a spay and neuter clinic, and I do follow a lot of animal rescue stuff. The only reason I don't foster kittens myself is because my husband will not let me, because he's allergic and we have 5 animals and all that stuff. But like I'm a person who like follows people who foster kittens and donate to people like that who like, because they burn through cat food like nobody's business. But it was just so weird to me reading this book and seeing just how animal welfare had just not it was just not as prevalent at all back then in spreading awareness of the importance of spaying and neutering your animals. And it was just so weird to me reading it, because it gave it this such dated feel. Like, even their, like, the people's hairstyles in these photos were nothing on like that portion of it. So I did also have a couple of DNFs in the latter half of December. Basically, 2 out of the 4 books I tried to read on the plane ended up being DNFs. So the first book that I DNF'd on the plane is New Orleans Magic by whatever, J.L. Hendrick or something. And this is about, basically it's an urban fantasy about these 4 girls who battle paranormal things, and they're in a band. And basically it started off kind of good, except for, like, I wasn't a fan of the writing style. It was very, like, juvenile, I felt, and got a good third of this book, like more than a third of the way through this book, and I just could not take it anymore. Like, for a little while I was trying to decide whether it was, like, so bad it was good or whether it was just bad, and in the end I decided that I just didn't want to continue reading it. And you guys know, if you've been watching this channel, I've mentioned in so many videos how a huge pet peeve of mine is when characters in a book are in a band just because it's cool, and this book was so guilty of that, like the guiltiest I had ever seen. I'm not even kidding you right now. So basically all 4 of them have, like, crazy hair colors and all this stuff, but their being in a band together has no bearing on the plot whatsoever, so it was really just there for the coolness and not for any contribution to the story whatsoever. So it just kind of irked me after a while. I was just like, why? Like, I don't get it. I just don't, and I don't care. So whatever, that was a DNF. The other DNF was regrettably also an indie book, and I hate it when I have to DNF indie books because I'm just not enjoying them, but this was Shadows of Lela by Tessonia Odette, and this is basically a fantasy book, and I only got maybe less than 10% of the way through, because a lot of it was just so just trying to force things down our throat, kind of. And it starts off with, for example, this princess that, like, shows up and she just looks perfect, and that's literally how she's described. And these 2 brothers are, like, both wishing they could be these 2 princes who are brothers. They both want to be with her, but one of them is the one she's supposed to marry, and they literally all this entire exchange happens just because they haven't even met her. They literally just saw her. They think she's perfect, and then they have this whole exchange, and I seriously was just like, really now? Like, why any of that? I'm sorry, like, no. So anyway, that is my very meager December wrap-up part 2. I felt like even, like, I had to do something for a December wrap-up part 2, because I did my part 1 already and it only had like 3 books on it. So I'm sorry, I spent my whole vacation editing my book and playing music, so I didn't actually read that much stuff. Even on the plane, those 2 books were DNFs. I did also get a good chunk of the way through another book on the plane that I just didn't finish, but that's not a DNF. That's one that I do plan to continue and finish soon. I just didn't have enough time to on the plane, but basically you get the idea. That's why my wrap-up is so short, so I'm very, very sorry about that. My next wrap-up will be longer, I promise. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!